I stood at the edge of the grave and watched them lower her into the ground. It was a gray morning, the kind of gray that doesn't have any drama to it, just flat and quiet and cold. There were maybe 40 people there. Some I recognized, some I didn't. A few of her co-workers stood near the back. Her sister cried loudly from the start. Her sister always had to be the loudest person in any room. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't love her. I loved her more than I have ever loved anything in my life. I just couldn't find the tears. I stood there and felt something heavier than sadness, something that had no name. Her name was Claire. We were married for 22 years. She died on a Tuesday morning in October. Heart attack. She was 51 years old. The doctors said it was sudden. They said she didn't suffer. I don't know if that's true or if they just say that to make it easier. I kept my hands folded in front of me. I listened to the priest speak. I heard the words, but they didn't land anywhere inside me. I watched the dark wood of the casket disappear into the earth, and I thought about the last thing she said to me. She said, "Don't forget to lock the back door." That was it. That was the last thing. I'd walked out of the bedroom to make coffee, and when I came back, she was gone. Just like that. 22 years, and the last sentence was about a door. I was still thinking about that when the man appeared at my side. I didn't see him approach. One moment I was alone, and the next, he was there, standing just close enough to speak quietly. He was around 60 years old. Thin face, gray coat. He looked like someone who spent a lot of time being invisible on purpose. He didn't look at me when he spoke. He kept his eyes on the grave. He said, "I'm sorry for your loss." I nodded. I thought he was just another acquaintance, someone from her office maybe. Then he said, "She didn't tell you everything." I turned to look at him. He still wasn't looking at me. His voice was low and completely steady, like he had rehearsed this, like he had been waiting for this exact moment for a long time. He said, "Check the safe deposit box, the one at Meridian Bank on Callaway Street. You'll understand when you see it." I started to speak. I started to ask who he was and how he knew my wife and what he meant, but he was already stepping back, already moving through the small crowd of mourners. I watched him walk away, and then he was gone, past the trees, past the cars, just gone. I stood there for a moment. The priest was still speaking. Claire's sister was still crying. The casket was still descending, and something had changed in the air, something I couldn't describe. I told myself it was nothing. A grief-stricken person at a cemetery. Some man who maybe knew Claire from a long time ago. Maybe he was confused. Maybe he had the wrong funeral. People say strange things at funerals. Death makes people strange. I told myself all of that, and I almost believed it. But the words stayed in me. All through the rest of the service, all through the drive home, all through the first terrible empty night in a house that still smelled like her. She didn't tell you everything. I sat at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, and I thought about that sentence. I thought about what I knew about Claire's finances. We had a joint account. We had a savings account. I handled most of the bills. I thought I knew everything about our money. But then I tried to remember. Did I know about a safe deposit box at Meridian Bank? I searched my memory. I searched it carefully, and I found nothing. No memory of that box, no conversation about it, nothing. That meant she had it without telling me. That meant she had kept something from me. And the question I didn't want to ask was sitting right there in the dark kitchen. It had been there since the cemetery. I just hadn't looked at it directly yet. What was in the box? I went to the bank 2 days after the funeral. I hadn't planned to go that day. I woke up early and I got dressed, and I found myself driving toward Callaway Street before I had made any real decision about it. I spoke to a woman at the front desk. I told her my wife had recently passed. I told her I believed she had a box at this branch. The woman was kind. She looked up the account. She confirmed it. The box was registered in Claire's name alone, but as her spouse and legal beneficiary, I had the right to access it. It took about 30 minutes to handle the paperwork. I sat in a small room and waited. The bank was quiet. There was soft music playing. I remember thinking the music was completely wrong for what I was feeling. A young man brought the box to me. He set it on the table and left me alone. I looked at it for a long moment. It was a standard gray metal box, small, maybe 12 inches long. I lifted the lid. There was a letter on top, in Claire's handwriting. My name on the front of the envelope, just David. Below the letter there was a manila folder, and below that there was a smaller envelope sealed with tape, and at the bottom of the box there was a photograph. I picked up the photograph first. It showed a young woman, maybe 20 years old, dark hair. She was sitting at a table somewhere outdoor, smiling. She looked like Claire. Not exactly like Claire, but something in the eyes was the same, the shape of the face. I turned the photo over. On the back in Claire's handwriting there were 2 words. The words were, "She's yours." I sat very still. I put the photograph down on the table, and I opened the manila folder. Inside were documents, a birth certificate. The name on it was Mara Elise Ponton. The date of birth was 31 years ago. The mother's name was Claire Ann Hollis. That was Claire's maiden name. Claire before she was Claire Brennan, Claire before she was mine. The father's name on the birth certificate was left blank. I put the folder down and I opened the letter. She had written it by hand on 3 pages. The handwriting was careful and slow, the kind of handwriting a person uses when they are choosing every word. She started by saying she was sorry. She said she had wanted to tell me 100 times. She said she had rehearsed the conversation in her head for years and never found the courage to start it. Before we met, she had a relationship with a man named Robert Ponton. She was 20 years old. She got pregnant. Robert left. He didn't want the child and he didn't want her. She had the baby alone, a daughter, and then she gave the daughter up for adoption. She said it was the hardest thing she had ever done in her life. She said there had not been a single day since that she hadn't thought about it. We met 3 years after that. She didn't tell me. She was ashamed. She was afraid of what I would think. She was afraid I would leave. So she buried it. She buried it, and she married me, and she built a life, and she tried to let the past stay past. But then 9 years ago something had changed. She received a letter. The daughter had been found through a registry. A woman named Mara was looking for her birth mother. Claire had written back. They had been corresponding in secret for 9 years. Letters mostly, a few phone calls. They had met in person 3 times. Claire wrote, "I know this is not fair to you. I know you deserve to know. But I was scared of what I had done, and then I was scared of how long I had waited, and the longer I waited, the more impossible it became to start." She said she had left everything in the box so that after she was gone I would finally know the truth. She said she had always meant to tell me herself. She just ran out of time. The last line of the letter said, "I loved you completely. The 2 things can both be true." I sat in that small bank room for a long time. I don't know how long. I stared at the wall. I felt something moving through me that I can only describe as a slow rearranging, like furniture being moved in a house. The house was still the same house, but nothing was in the same place anymore. I thought about 22 years. I thought about all the times I thought I knew her fully. I thought about small moments that now had a different shadow on them. A letter she received that she tucked away quickly. A phone call she took outside. A quietness that would come over her sometimes that I had always attributed to tiredness. I wasn't angry at Claire. I want to be clear about that. I understood why she had done it. I didn't like it, but I understood it. She was afraid. People do things out of fear that they spend the rest of their lives carrying. What I felt was something closer to grief. A second grief layered right on top of the first. Then I opened the small sealed envelope. Inside was a single folded page. This was not from Claire. The handwriting was different, neater, more controlled. The page was from Claire's sister, from Patricia. It was dated 4 months before Claire died. The letter was addressed to someone named Gerald. I knew who Gerald was. Gerald was Patricia's husband. Patricia and Gerald had been married for 15 years. I had sat at their dinner table dozens of times. The letter was not long. It was direct and businesslike. It described a plan, a specific plan. It said that when Claire passed, the estate would be divided according to the current will. It said the current will left everything to me. And then it said that Gerald had found a lawyer who could challenge the will on grounds of hidden assets. It referenced the safe deposit box. It referenced Mara. It said that if a biological heir could be located and brought into a legal claim, the estate could be contested. It said, David won't fight it. He doesn't have the energy for a long battle. Then it said, he never does. I read that line twice. He never does. I put the page down. I put everything carefully back into the box. I closed the lid. I sat for another minute. I breathed. Then I asked myself a question. How did Patricia know about the box? How did Patricia know about Mara? And then the next question. Who was the man at the funeral? It took me 4 days to find out. I hired a private investigator, a quiet man named Voss who came recommended by a former colleague. I gave Voss the name Gerald. I gave him the letter. I gave him a description of the man at the cemetery. Voss came back to me in less than a week. The man at the funeral was a lawyer. His name was Dennis Farrow. He had been retained by Gerald 6 months ago. He specialized in estate disputes and inheritance claims. He had been watching the situation, and then he had done something that was either honest or strategic or both. He had shown up at the funeral and pointed me toward the truth before Gerald and Patricia could use it against me. I thought about that for a long time. A man hired by my enemy who decided to warn me instead. I didn't know his reasons. I still don't. Maybe he had his own history with Gerald. Maybe he just didn't like what he had been asked to do. Either way, he handed me the key before they could lock the door. I called Patricia that Sunday. I invited her and Gerald to dinner. I said I needed family around me. I said I was struggling. My voice was soft and a little broken. It wasn't entirely an act. They came on Wednesday evening. Patricia brought food. She always brought food. She hugged me at the door and held on for a moment longer than necessary. Gerald shook my hand. We sat at the table. We ate. Patricia talked about Claire, about memories from childhood. She cried a little. It was convincing. I will give her that. After the plates were cleared, I went to the kitchen and came back with a folder. I set it on the table between us. I sat down. I looked at Gerald first. I said, I found the box. Gerald's expression didn't change immediately. He was good at that. Patricia looked at the folder. I said, I found Claire's letter. I found the birth certificate. I found Mara. I paused, and I found yours. The silence at that table was total. Patricia said, David? I said, don't. Just that one word. Don't. And she stopped. I looked at Gerald. I kept my voice completely level. I said, you were going to use my wife's secret to take what she spent her whole life building with me. You were going to do it while I was still burying her. Gerald said, it wasn't like that. I said, I have the letter. I have the lawyer's name. I have the timeline. I have all of it. I folded my hands on the table. So please don't explain to me what it was like. He looked down. I said, I'm not going to court. I'm not going to involve lawyers. I let that sit for a moment. But you are going to remove yourselves from my life, completely. You are never going to contact me. You are never going to contact Mara. And if either of you ever tries to revisit this, I will make the whole thing public, every page of it. Patricia started to cry. I felt nothing about her tears. That surprised me a little. I had known this woman for over 2 decades, and I felt nothing. I said, Claire loved you. I don't know why, but she did. I'm going to let that be the reason I'm not destroying you right now. They left 20 minutes later. Gerald didn't speak again. Patricia stopped crying and just looked small. They walked out of the house and I locked the back door behind them. I stood in the kitchen alone. I thought about what Claire had said on her last morning. Lock the back door. I don't believe in signs. I never have. But I stood there in the quiet kitchen, and I thought about how strange life is, how much a person can carry without ever letting you see the weight, how love and secrecy can live in the same person at the same time and both be real. I contacted Mara 2 weeks later. I wrote her a letter. I told her who I was. I told her I knew about her. I told her Claire had spoken well of her in the letter she left me. I said I didn't want anything from her. I said I just wanted her to know that the woman who gave her life had never stopped thinking about her. She wrote back in 10 days. Her handwriting was neat. Her letter was short. She said she appreciated me reaching out. She said she had been devastated when she heard about Claire. She said she hoped one day we might meet, just to talk. I wrote back, yes, one day, when the time feels right, I still have all of it. The letter, the photograph, the birth certificate, they're in a box in my study now. Not a bank box, just a cardboard box on the shelf. Sometimes I take out the photograph. I look at the young woman sitting at that outdoor table, smiling, something of Claire in her eyes. I think about the man in the gray coat at the cemetery. I think about the letter left in a box I didn't know existed. I think about a woman who carried something heavy for 30 years and tried to make it right at the very end. Claire was not perfect. Neither am I. Neither is any person who has ever lived. But she loved me. And she tried. And in the end, she left me the truth even when she couldn't say it out loud. I think that means something. I lock the back door every night now, every single night without exception. It's a small thing. But it's mine.